right. So be careful what you say.
I think everyone's joining now, so I'll give it a minute.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. Hi, everybody. Welcome to tonight's November membership meeting. My name is Lynne Aristotle. I'm the current president of ISM-Rochester. Tonight, the speaker is Lynne Wiklander. You can see her all on your screen. And the topic is You Only Have 90 Seconds, an Introduction to Strategic Communication. There will be a follow-up session to this specific session next year, which is pretty soon. I can't believe 2022 is right around the corner. So stay tuned for that. There will also be a Q&A session at the end with Lynne, and Kathy Perna is monitoring the chat. So if you have any questions, you can save them at the end for Lynne, or you can ask them in the chat as well, whichever method you prefer. Now, with that being said, I'm going to pass it over to Lynne.
Thank you, Liana, and welcome, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for taking time this afternoon to be part of this session. I am so excited to meet all of you because I know that you are all heroes. Let me say that up front. I know that you're all heroes because nothing would happen if it wasn't for all of you in your professions. My name is Lynne Wiklander. I live in southern Sweden, so I am calling you in the middle of the night, speaking to you in the, not quite the middle of the night, but we're going to try to keep this nice and compact. The board has allotted me 1 hour to speak, and I intend to meet that mark or be a little bit early along the way. And I do want to start off by saying thank you in particular to Liana and to Lonnie and to Michelle and to Carrie Gateson, who were the ones that invited me to participate in this monthly meeting, and to Kathy, who's making sure that everything works along the way. Now, with that, I am going to blink off for just a moment so I can get into a PowerPoint presentation. I promise you this won't be death by PowerPoint. All right, it'll be hopefully very informative, easy reading for this. So hold on and we'll get started here. Make sure I've come in and let me get into the play mode here. Takes just a second. Whoops. And let's back up a little bit here. There we go. All right. And I hope all of you have a clear screen. Kathy and Liana, can you let me know if you're seeing just the PowerPoint right now?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. Now, you only have 90 seconds. I tried to create a provocative title for this and a meaningful one, because the fact is that you only have 90 seconds to be impactful in any communication forum. Now, I know that sounds like a really short period of time, but if you're not enticing your audience, if you're not exciting your audience, if you're not giving them a reason to listen within 90 seconds, no amount of strategy and no amount of brilliant communication is going to help you. So that's the starting point of an introduction to strategic communication skills. Now, one of the things that's near and dear to my heart is how people perceive themselves in their jobs. And every one of you is a leader. Now, how do I know that? It's not because I've seen your organization charts or because I know your titles or your positions with the organization, because those are not the things that define leadership. leadership is defined by your behavior, your everyday behavior. It's defined by your attitude. It is defined by your ability to communicate to all types of audience, all levels of people inside your organization, outside your organization. When you are in other meeting kinds of environments, maybe you belong to other outside organizations like ISM, that's what defines leadership. So if we talk about leadership communication, there are specific items that you can focus on to ensure that you are communicating as a leader. So I urge you all to start with that frame of mind. I am a leader. I am a leader in my organization. Regardless of the organization chart, I am a leader. Now, what does leadership communication involve? Well, the start of it is what we call executive presence. Whenever you are communicating, whether it's a presentation, or maybe you're having a chat with somebody next to the coffee pot, or you're in a telephone call, whenever you're communicating, you own the message. Now, that means that there is nobody on the planet, there's nobody in the universe who is better at delivering your message than you are. And you need to project that confidence, that presence, that pondus. Look that up in the dictionary. Look up pondus in the dictionary and see what it means, because it's more rounded, it's more complete than the word charisma. So it starts with executive presence, leadership presence. Now, the next item on the list is that you are saying things in a compelling way. It's not just the blah, 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 that there is something that is exciting your audience. Now, I'm not talking about thrilling. This isn't about having your audience think you're going to do a bungee jump or backflips. This is about saying things in a way that tickles their imagination, that compels them to continue to listen to you. The third item on the list, staying out of the weeds. And I have been in this business for a long time. I have had the pleasure, the honor of meeting thousands and thousands of people. And I have to tell you, the common thread around the world, because I work internationally, the common thread around the world is the difficulty of staying out of the weeds. And what do I mean by that? When you become so involved in your own topic and the details of your topic that you have lost the main message of whatever it is you're speaking about. You haven't followed through so that the audience really grasps and can run with your main message. So learning to stay out of the weeds. And I'll tell you something about that. You must learn to trust that the people who are listening to you will ask a question. If they have a question, you must learn to give them that respect, to trust their professionalism. So you don't have to dive down into the weeds. They don't need to be as competent as you are on a particular subject in order for you to move forward on a particular topic, on a particular strategy. So stay out of the weeds. You also need to be prepared to answer questions. And for a lot of people, Q&A is the most nerve-wracking part of communication because you don't know what they're going to ask. Well, here's the first of what will be numerous bold statements this evening. And that is, if you have properly prepared your argument your discussion, whether, again, it's a phone call or it's a video conference or it's a stand-up live in-person meeting, big or small, or a conference, if you have prepared appropriately, no question will surprise you. No question should come as a surprise if you are properly prepared. And in fact, Q&A is something to look forward to. And the reason is Q&A gives you the clearest insight into exactly what it is the person or people that you are communicating with, what they are interested in. So we say hooray for Q&A. It's not something to be dreaded. It's something to look forward to. And finally, getting to the ask. The majority of the communication, the strategic communication that you are doing as part of your professional assignments, and by the way, the things I'm talking about this evening are not just for your 40, 50, 60-hour a week job. They're for life. They're for life. So get to the ask. And that is, I have seen so many examples where an individual or a team prepared a really fantastic case, a really remarkable presentation. Maybe they were asking for more resources. Maybe they were looking for confirmation on a project. Maybe they were explaining how the toll gates had been run. Maybe they were looking for money. But they never asked for what they needed. They built the whole case, but they never got to the ask. So getting to the ask. So these 5 items are the keys to leadership communication. So that's our starting point. You're all leaders. These are characteristics that will give you the reputation of being a top-notch communicator. Now, there's a whole bunch of mythology surrounding communication. They're what I call the great communication myths. Now, let me give you just a few of my favorites. And I'd like you to think about this, about whether any of what I'm talking about resonates with you as a misperception, as a myth about being a world-class communicator. One of the top myths is that somehow your personality style will define how good you are as a communicator. That somehow if you're an extrovert by nature, that you will be an excellent communicator. That's not a given. Or that somehow, because you're an introvert, you won't be able to be successful in a communication platform. Not true. And then there's the midverts who have the best of all possible worlds, extrovert and introvert. Your personality style does not define your capacity as, or your potential as a great communicator. Another great myth is that somehow you can practice too much. You can't practice too much. The more you practice, the easier it is to be spontaneous, to be like the comics on the late night shows who appear to be improvising. They're not improvising at all. They've been practicing for months and months and months, and they have practiced so well for so long that it comes off as being natural. So there's no such thing as too much practice, provided you practice in the right way. Now, There's also a myth that some people are just born communicators. They're born speakers. Nobody is born to do this. Nobody is born knowing how to be a world-class communicator. This is a learned and practiced skill. And I underline practice, practice, practice. It is a set of skills that you learn and then you practice. Nobody is a natural. It's not like having a baseball natural or whatever. Another one is that communication is easy. And communication, good communication, is not easy. It's hard work. And a lot of people would like to believe that because we do communication all the time, that somehow we're really good at it, except maybe under special circumstances. That simply isn't the case. Good communication, when I say good communication, that means that what is in my head and comes out of my mouth and enters your brain through your ears, that we have exactly the same understanding after that process takes place. And there are many, many very reasonable, natural reasons why communication is hard. I mean, most of you, if you're like me, you grew up with parents that said, don't talk to strangers, don't talk to strangers. And there was a reason for that. Well, gosh, what do you think you're doing most of your life? You're talking to strangers until, of course, they become friends. So these are just a few of the communication myths. And I'm going to ask you to now think of these in terms of being great myths. None of those are true. Communication excellence. And that means being able to meet the needs of whoever is listening to you, meet their needs, is a learned and practiced skill. It requires consistent practice. But clear, consistent communication is an absolute essential. It is essential in 99.99% of all professions. If you're meeting or speaking with another human being ever, an essential skill is excellent communication. Now, what does this start with? There are multiple factors to keep in mind every single time you want to bring forward what we call an argument or rhetoric. That's the formal term. Anytime your goal is to convince somebody to do something. So what we call that, we're looking for change. We're looking for action, or maybe a change of attitude, a change of behavior, a change of perception. These are all change. And most of our communication in our lives is based on creating change. This can be anything from getting your kids to wear their boots because it's cold and wet outside, to convincing your family that this year you don't want to do the whole Thanksgiving dinner for all 27 people, to going to your boss to ask for a couple of extra days off, to meeting your team, to encourage them to be even more consistent in their work. All of these involve change. And in order to execute that change, you need to keep three things in mind. Now, I call this Aristotle's triangle. For those of you that did have a chance to meet Aristotle somewhere during your education, he's a good guy. I never met him personally, but 2,400 years ago, 2,400 years ago, Aristotle developed this framework that is still used, still valid today regarding what does it take to be successful in communication. There are 3 points on the triangle, so it's very well balanced. Now, the first point is what they call the pathos, the emotion. The pathos is the root word for passion. And Aristotle brought forward the theory that if you want somebody to be engaged with you in a communication activities, you need to show passion. Now, that doesn't mean theatrical passion. That doesn't mean waving your arms or being a particularly brilliant joke teller. Oh, no jokes, please. But it means conveying the image to whoever you're speaking with that you care, that you really care, that you, to use a more modern phrase, you've got skin in the game on this. So passion. Now, I have had many, many clients who were in the insurance industry, and I've had many clients who had accounting responsibilities or financial responsibilities. And numerous times people have looked at me when I said you have to show passion about your topic, and they rolled their eyes and they said, Lynne, really? This is boring. What I have to talk about is boring. And my answer to them is, if it's that boring, why have you chosen it as your career? Well, then they brighten up and they start telling me all the reasons that they chose to go into the insurance business or go into accounting or financial services of some kind. And I'm saying that's what I mean, conveying that enthusiasm, that interest. Now, the next item that needs to be kept in mind is what we call the ethos. This is the root word from Greek for the word ethics. And ethics is, by definition, your personal code of integrity and your credibility. Now, your credibility is not defined by your title. It's not defined by how long you've been in your job. It is not defined by what community you live in. It's not defined by what country you live in. Your personal credibility is defined every time you start speaking, and it is redefined and reestablished and reinforced over and over and over again. Some of you may have even had the experience of looking forward to a speaker, of being really psyched to hear a particular speaker. Maybe it was a leader in your organization, or maybe it was some external speaker, and that person didn't live up to your expectations. And you knew that within 90 seconds. You knew that within 90 seconds, and it's shattering. It's shattering. If that's never happened to you, I'm happy for you. It's happened to me, where I was really looking forward to somebody. They had a name. I mean, it was a named person, like an important, see on television kind of person. And I started listening to their speech, their presentation. Within 90 seconds, I was ready to walk out, just ready to walk out. So that credibility has to be established and then reinforced all along the way. The third part of any successful presentation, strategic communication has to do with having the facts. And I suspect that most of you are pretty darn good with the facts, the data. A lot of my clients are technology companies, and they live for data. They live for the technology truth. And that's a really good thing. But data doesn't speak for itself. No data ever spoke for itself. It has to have a voice. And that voice needs to deliver those facts wrapped in the passion and the credibility. So it takes all three parts of this to make a complete communication. And this is regardless of your topic. This is regardless of how many people you're speaking with, how much status there is in what it is you're talking about, how long you have to speak, all of that, all of those metrics are irrelevant. This is about effective, efficient, successful communication between people, between human beings. Actually, it works kind of well with dogs too, but between human beings, anytime you want to be communicative. Now, what we need to discuss is impact. Impact is in my career choice in communication, as a communication professional, impact is the measure of success. It's an easy way to define success. And impact has three elements to it. The first element is, did the audience, did whoever you're speaking with, one or more persons in any format, did they understand the meaning of what you said? This isn't about language. This is about getting to the core meaning. The second part of the success measurement, the impact measurement, is, were you believable? Did they trust you? Were you credible? And the third part is, do they remember the right things? So I've got a really tough statistic for you. Here it is. Whenever you speak, let's say you're in a meeting and you're giving a stand-up presentation, a live presentation. Before the people in the meeting have left the room, before they've left the room, they have forgotten 90% of what you said. That's kind of grim, isn't it? They have forgotten 90%. Within 24 hours, they will have forgotten another 5%. That means in the best of cases, they will actually remember 5% of what you said. Therefore, it is critical that you identify, when you're planning a communication activity, that you identify what is the critical 5%. Because everything can't be critical. If everything is critical, nothing is critical. So what is the critical 5%? I often say in my regular courses, I deliver about 200 to 250 tips and tricks related to successful communication. 200 separate tips. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. I can only expect the smartest of smart individuals that come to my classes, I can only expect them to remember 5%. That's 10 items. So I have to be really careful about which 10 items I focus on for an individual, for each individual. All right. Now, in order to communicate, we have a whole toolkit actually at our disposal. Successful communication means integrating the toolkit that you have, the physical part of communication, with the content. So these need to be in a perfect marriage, the physical part and the content part. If you are a brilliant presenter, I mean, really brilliant, but you don't have anything good to say, or you're not saying things that the audience wants to hear, you will fail. The opposite is also true. If you're a poor presenter or a mediocre presenter with brilliant content, you are likely to fail. It takes both sides of that equation to be successful. Now, how do we describe this toolkit that's required for successful communication? We call it the physicality of communication, and there's 3 elements that you can keep in mind. You can remember 3, magic 3. 3 is a magic number. What is your body language saying to whoever you're speaking with? What is your voice telling them? And what do the words tell them? So in body language, we can talk about hands, we can talk about your posture, how you are looking at the audience, how you are moving as you present, the movements that you have in general. With the voice, we can talk about how loud you are or how soft you are, how quickly you're speaking, how slowly you're speaking. Are you using the music of speech, or are you putting your audience to sleep, flatlining with a monotone voice? So these are qualities of body, qualities of voice, and then the words. And the words need to be chosen so that they're comfortable in your mouth and they're comfortable for the audience also. Now, here's a little quiz for you. I want you to think about this. And I'm not able to speak to you for the answers, but I'm going to give you a moment to think about this. If I tell you that these 3 items work together to create successful communication, do you believe that they are balanced? In other words, that to be successful in strategic communication, 33% of your success is body language, 33% is your voice, and 33% are the words that you say. Do you believe that, or do you believe that they are imbalanced or unbalanced? Sorry, unbalanced. So think about that for just a minute. Think about people you've seen, people you've heard, how you yourself communicate. Well, the answer is they are unbalanced. And in fact, they are dramatically unbalanced. And the statistics I'm going to show you, the first time people see these statistics, they can be a little bit intimidated, maybe even scared. You'll get over it. It's life. But the truth of the matter is, when it comes to communication, 58% of your communication success is based on your body language. 58%. 35% of your communication success is based on your voice. And for those of you that are good in higher math, you'll recognize that only 7% is the words that you say. And yet, when we're planning communication, when we're getting ready for a meeting, maybe you're doing a big presentation or a smaller presentation. Maybe it's an internal team presentation. Maybe it's to an external client. Where do we spend our time? Well, we spend our time putting together the content, pounding out PowerPoint slides, or writing a script, or trying to write a script. How many of you actually practice your body language? And how many of you practice using your voice effectively? Think about it. If those two items represent 93% of your success in communication, what are we doing spending all of our time writing scripts or pounding out PowerPoint? Food for thought. Now, as we go forward, we can say that successful communication is as much, at least as much, about how you say something as what it is you're saying. And the evidence for that is in those scary statistics, which are backed up by research that has been repeated globally for about 50 years now. It is, and that research is not prejudiced by country, by language, by profession, by education, by gender. It's human. It's human. Now, when we talk about specifically about strategic communication, we can build a kind of a pyramid to describe strategic communication and the role that it plays. So on this pyramid, within an organization, any organization of any substantial size, you start with the vision that that organization has. A vision is stable. A vision is aspirational. In truth, there are very few organizations that achieve their vision. This is a long-term item, very long-term, the vision. Now, below the vision, we have the mission. The mission can change regularly. In most cases, missions can change annually or semi-annually according to changes in the world in general, your particular profession specifically, your particular conditions even more specifically. So the mission can be adjusted, but the vision remains solid. Then we get to the strategy. Now, the strategy is, what are you going to do here and now, today, tomorrow, in order to achieve the current mission, which is supporting the vision? Below that, we have our specific tactics. So what are the actions that are going to be taken that are defined by the strategy that supports the mission, which is identified as supporting the vision? We have the execution. So the tactics are the part that is executed day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute. And then finally, we have evaluation, analysis, and measurement. Now, evaluation, analysis, and measurement are taking place all along the route from the strategy, tactics, through execution. And the whole mess is underpinned by the values that your organization represents. So when we talk about strategic communication, we are talking about the capacity to deliver the strategy at each of these steps. So there is a main strategy, but there are then underlying strategies. And strategic communication is being able to convey, inspire, provide a vision that allows people to grasp that strategy all along the way. So this is not, strategic communication is not just information dump. You know, go to the fire escape, that's information. What can we do to prevent fires in the organization? That's strategy. Now, in order to be successful in strategic communication, you need to start with a basic premise. And that premise is that what you want to say is far less important than how your audience needs to hear what you want to say. The point that's critical is it is not what you want to say that's most important. It is how does your audience need to hear what you're saying in order for you to be communicative, in order for you to be successful. You need to know what are the audience's needs. What are the drivers that are going to inspire or scare or make your audience joyful, make them curious, interest them, keep their interest, engage them. You need to know their needs. And you as the owner of the material that you need to present strategically, you are not a good surrogate for your audience. You can't be in the business of pleasing yourself with your communication. You need to please the audience. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to always agree with you. That's a different topic. But you need to keep them engaged so they at least listen. You have to start with that they are listening to what they're truly listening, actively listening to what you have to say and understanding why you're saying it. So we can identify needs by asking a series of questions, or rather by answering a series of questions. And this is true, again, regardless of who you're speaking with, whether you're talking to somebody in your family, in your community, in an organization, it's your job, in your department, as a stranger, a new client, prospective client, they all have certain key concerns. Those concerns are, okay, who is involved in this? Who is involved in this, right? Who do we need to be concerned about? Who do we need to resource? Who do we need to be in contact with? So answering that who question. Next is, what is it we are trying to achieve? What is the perfect end result? Remember, I said earlier about focusing on the ask, getting to the point of what it is you're trying to change. What is it you're trying to change? What is the perfect end to this engagement? Why is this important? We tend to spend a lot of time describing the details, but we don't get around to why this is important. Giving individuals that, again, that inspiration, giving them that vision of how things will be better, hopefully, how things will be different if we move forward on this particular communication activity. Then we also have how are we going to achieve it? Now, this is where the how is where people tend to be most comfortable. And we tend to overdo the how. We tend to spend 90% of our time thinking about and describing the how. We're going to have this many people, and then we're going to have this many toll gates, and we're going to have this kind of a timeline, and we're going to make these kinds of changes, et cetera, et cetera. The how is important, but the how won't carry it. The how tends to be the data. And the how is not enough to have a specific, successful strategic communication activity. And then finally, identifying the metrics for success. Is it money? Is it time? Is it contracts? Is it people? Is it opening up new facilities? Is it closing down facilities? Is it hiring? Is it firing? What are the metrics? That means that whenever you're planning a communication activity, and remember, every communication activity counts. There's no such thing as casual communication. Whether you're standing in the lunch line, or you're meeting after dinner on a TGIF, or you're in an office meeting, or you're on a Zoom call, there's no such thing as casual communication, particularly in a business environment. So these are the questions that need to be answered if you expect to be successful in your strategic communication activity. Now, I said that there were two critical parts, that you have to have the how you deliver, the physicality, body language, your voice, using your voice well, and you need to have the content. So the delivery and the content need to go together. But what can you do to structure the content so it makes it as easy as possible for you to answer these questions to create a piece of successful communication as efficiently as possible? For many of you, communicating, whether it's, again, standing up, Zoom call, a meeting, quick meeting, long meeting, for many of you, if you're asked to prepare, it often feels like it's taking away time from doing your job. I hear many, many comments about people who feel tortured by getting ready for the next meeting, or the next presentation, or the next one, or the next one. And it hasn't become easier with COVID. It has not become easier. In fact, it's become harder, because communicating via a video call, while it's very nice and advanced technically, it isn't the same. And I already said, communicating well isn't easy. This is another layer of challenge. So don't underestimate how difficult it is to be effective in your communication when you're in a video environment or a web-based environment. Live is so much better. But what can you do to make it easier for you to structure your content, which makes it easier for you to deliver that content in the best way possible? Well, I have a form that I use, and this form will come up in just a minute. But first, let's talk about what are some keys. I call them the 5 C's, the 5 C's of communication success. Take a look at these. You need to be clear. There needs to be clarity on behalf of the audience. It can't just be clear to you. It's got to be clear to your audience. Remember that they understand the meaning. Concise. You don't want to go on longer than you need to get your point across. There's an old adage in the sales field that you can oversell. or you can actually undercut a sale by talking too much. So you want to be concise as possible while maintaining clarity. You also want to maintain your credibility all along the way. You need to be consistent, and consistent means that if you're delivering a good news message, that you're doing it in a way that makes people feel good. And if you're delivering a bad news message, which all of you will have to do or do have to do, you need to look sad. You need to convey an appropriate emotion and use the appropriate vocabulary to match what message you're trying to get across. And finally, you need to be compelling. That is, hold their interest, capture their interest. You've got less than 90 seconds to do that, and then hold their interest, regardless of how long you're speaking, whether it's 2 minutes, 20 minutes, 3 days, whatever. All right. Now let's take a look at this form that I was talking about. Here's something that I've developed, which I use whenever I'm getting ready for a presentation. I actually fill it out. I manually fill out the form. And it starts with identifying what is going to happen after I am through communicating. What is the perfect result? So for example, take today's meeting. I was given the parameters by the individuals I spoke with. I agreed to stay within those parameters. And what is the perfect ending? Well, the perfect ending is that you, my listeners, have picked up a few tidbits that have been thought-provoking and maybe even useful regarding communication. That's the best that I can hope for, meeting you in this environment for 1 hour. So that is the perfect ending to this presentation. You've picked up a few bits and pieces that you can find usable going forward. The next thing I look at is what do I need to know about the audience that I'm speaking with? What are the things that are going to make a difference? Now, I'm just putting up a laundry list for things for you to think about. But for example, the demographics of who you're speaking with, that could be age demographics, educational demographics, experience, differences in experience, differences in culture, differences in language, difference in from what part of the country are they coming in from or dialing in from, et cetera. So what does the demographics look like? What is the culture? And this is as much as anything, the culture of the organization, because every organization, every department has its own culture. Every organization has its own culture. Every profession has its own culture. And then there's all of the external cultural issues. Do these individuals have the knowledge necessary to understand the meaning of what I'm saying? Or is that something I have to take into account? Do I have to backfill? What about their biases or prejudices about what I'm suggesting, what I'm talking about, what it is I'm trying to move forward? How are they feeling? Are they in a good mood? Are they in a bad mood? Are they looking forward to a Thanksgiving winter storm? Are they going on vacation in the Caribbean for the first time in 3 years? All right. How are they feeling? What is the group dynamic if you're speaking with multiple individuals? Because there is always a personality that is developed within a group, even when the group is an online group. Now, it is more obvious, it happens more quickly in a live environment, but it definitely occurs and it definitely influences you if you're doing a web-based meeting, a Zoom meeting. The more people there are in the group that you're speaking to, you're trying to convey a message to, the more complicated the group dynamic is. And then we have, what are you going to say to really engage them from the get-go? Hello, my name is, is not terribly engaging in most cases. Sorry. But that isn't a great way to start. But you perhaps noticed, I mean, I started out with, you only have 90 seconds to engage your audience. That was my opening line. Hopefully it engaged you. And then finally, what are the areas that you're going to talk about? And you've got to keep it clean and compact. People can't handle things in more than threes, believe it or not. It becomes too complicated. So finally, we have a case where how will you end your presentation? What will you say and how will you say it to make it memorable? How will you close your presentation to be sure you get what you need? How do you build in the ask, the commitment that you're looking for? So finally, communication excellence. Well, it's not easy, but it's not magic. It is entirely achievable by the most humble of human beings. You too can be an excellent strategic communicator. You need to keep in mind 3 items. Number 1, the audience is first. What they need to hear and how they need to hear it is first above all else. What you want to say comes after. Second, be sure that you do everything in your power to answer their concerns and their questions during the presentation, during the engagement, during the communication activity. And finally, use those 5 C's of excellent communication: being clear, being consistent, being compelling. That group of 5 C's. Which of course, right at this moment, I left 2 out. Do you know what I left out? Concise and credible. And in order to be the most concise, I am going to say thank you. Thank you so much for your attention for more than 90 seconds. I hope some of you have asked questions. And again, I want to thank the board, Kathy, for giving me this opportunity. It is my passion, and I wish you all a terrific evening. Thank you very much.
Hi, Lynn, we did have one question from Tom.
One?
Yeah, we did have one question, but we have one, so that's great. How does all this change now where we are presenting more on Zoom than in person? I can see 7% of the speaker's body, but 58% of my screen is the words.
Yeah.
Voice can remain at 35%.
Right. It hasn't, as I did say, it hasn't made life easier. It has made life more difficult. However, there is some compensation in that. Now, one point, which is remarkable, most people find this remarkable, is that the body language, as long as you have a video, the body language and clearly the voice still play a critical role. And yes, the body language, even though you're only seeing me from, mid rib cage and up, my body language is delivering, and so will yours. And this is why I say, as often as possible, as often as reasonable, if you have a Zoom call or Zoom meeting in particular, and the more higher stakes the meeting is, the more important this becomes. People need to be on video. They need to be on camera on this. Now, have there been specific studies done regarding the effectiveness of communication in these Zoom environments? there have been some studies, but it's still really, really early to give a diagnosis of how the voice and video parts change and how the words may change in terms of their level of importance. But what I truly can say to you is you cannot underestimate how critical the body language part and voice, how critical those elements are, even over the words, even though we're in a Zoom environment. That's one of the things I also want to add in. We didn't talk about things like visual aids, like PowerPoint, but one of the worst mistakes somebody can make is to have a PowerPoint slide that looks like an eye test, or it looks like a page out of a dictionary, and then they proceed to read it to a Zoom audience. Really? I can read. That's how I got my job. I can read, right? So that is actually the way you use visual aids, and in other words, the words that you put up on the screen is much, much more sensitive in a Zoom environment. That I can tell you.
Thank you. We do have a nice comment from Lonnie. He said, wow, fantastic and great timing.
Oh.
I have to present to a management group in 2 weeks to the agency we are merging with. And oh yeah, we're telling that that our way is the best way to do things. Very good comment.
Thank you very much for that nice comment. But it was a joy. It really was a joy. And if there's any other questions, I mean, I'm still here. I've got 32 seconds left. Come on, we can get a lot of questions answered in 32 seconds.
I don't see anything coming in right now, but I would like to thank you on behalf of ISM-Rochester for coming and speaking at the membership meeting tonight.
Thank you.
And I thank the audience also for participating. And as Leanna said, Lynne will be back sometime in 2022 next year. So we'll make sure we get all the information out to everybody. I didn't know, Leanna, did you have anything else you wanted to add before we close?
I just wanted to say thank you so much. I think that the presentation was excellent. I definitely took some notes. I can't lie. I wrote down some notes.
That's good.
Yes.
That's really good.
Yes. And I know there's some chats now that say that they thought the presentation was fantastic as well. So thank you, Lynne, so much. And thank you all for coming tonight, to the members as well.
Thank you all for your time. I appreciate it. And happy holidays, all of the holidays. Happy holidays to everybody. Be safe.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.